Okay, here's something weird. You can have a chicken coop with 0 roosters, and the hens will still lay eggs every day. No rooster, no mating, no problem. So where are those eggs coming from? And if there's no rooster, how does a chicken even make an egg? The answer reveals something surprisingly important about reproduction, because the egg you're eating isn't actually the same thing as a baby chicken. We need to understand what a chicken egg actually is. When you hear the word egg, you probably imagine something containing a developing chick, but that's only true if the egg has been fertilized. An unfertilized chicken egg is basically a reproductive cell surrounded by layers of nutrients and protection. The hen doesn't need a rooster to manufacture that system. She only needs a functioning reproductive system. And here's the strange part. A hen's body is going to produce eggs whether or not a rooster is anywhere nearby. Why? Because laying eggs is part of her normal reproductive cycle. Think about it like this. A female chicken is born with thousands of tiny, immature egg cells inside her ovaries. As she grows, some of those cells mature. One becomes the yolk. Then the yolk is released from the ovary. And that's when the real construction project begins. The yolk enters a tube called the oviduct. As it travels through the oviduct, the hen gradually builds the rest of the egg around it. First comes the egg white, then membranes, then, finally, the hard shell. The entire process can take roughly a day, and once the egg is finished, the hen lays it. No rooster required. The rooster only becomes important for one specific thing: fertilization. And this is where the biology gets interesting. When a rooster mates with a hen, sperm enters her reproductive tract. Some of that sperm can be stored inside the hen's body. So when she later releases another egg cell, sperm can potentially meet it. If that happens, fertilization occurs. Now, the egg contains the starting point of an embryo. But notice something important. The rooster didn't cause the hen to produce the egg. The egg was already going to be produced. The rooster simply determines whether that egg has the genetic material needed to potentially develop into a chick. It's almost like the hen builds the entire house, and the rooster provides one crucial ingredient that determines whether anyone can actually live there. And this explains something many people get wrong about supermarket eggs. If you crack open an ordinary supermarket egg, you're not looking at a baby chicken that somehow failed to develop. You're looking at an unfertilized egg. There was no embryo inside it. No chick was waiting to hatch. The rooster was never involved. And that's exactly what commercial egg production wants, because hens don't need to be fertilized to lay eggs. Commercial laying hens are generally kept without roosters because fertilization isn't necessary for producing eggs for food. The hens simply keep laying. But now comes the really interesting question. Why would a hen keep producing eggs if there isn't even a rooster around? Shouldn't evolution have prevented that? Not necessarily. Because evolution doesn't work by constantly checking whether every reproductive attempt succeeds. The reproductive system evolved to create opportunities for reproduction. Under natural conditions, a male might be nearby. Sometimes an egg would be fertilized, sometimes it wouldn't. The hen's body doesn't need to stop the entire process every time fertilization fails. It simply follows its biological cycle. Hormones trigger development. The yolk matures, the egg gets assembled, and the hen lays it. But humans have pushed this system much further. Wild chickens don't naturally produce eggs at anything close to the rate of many modern laying breeds. Their ancestors, such as red junglefowl, laid eggs in relatively limited reproductive bouts. Then humans started selecting chickens that produced more, and more, and more, generation after generation. Eventually, we created chickens capable of producing hundreds of eggs per year. That's an extraordinary transformation. The bird wasn't designed by nature to make breakfast for humans. We essentially turned one part of its reproductive cycle into a high-output biological production system. But here's where things get even stranger. Every egg is expensive for the hen. The yolk contains fats and proteins. The white contains water and proteins. The membranes provide additional protection. And then there's the shell. The shell is mostly calcium carbonate. So every time a hen lays an egg, she's building a mineral fortress around the reproductive material. And that calcium has to come from somewhere, from her diet, from her metabolism, and, if necessary, from calcium stored in her own skeleton. That's why producing huge numbers of eggs can be physically demanding for a hen. And here's another bizarre thing. Sometimes the egg doesn't come out normally. You can occasionally get a soft-shelled egg. Instead of a hard shell, it's surrounded mainly by the flexible membranes underneath. Something went wrong during shell formation. Other times, two yolks enter the reproductive tract close together. Instead of producing two separate eggs, the hen produces one giant egg containing both. a double-yolk egg. Basically, two reproductive cells ended up sharing the same shell. And then there's the opposite question. Could a hen somehow make a chick without a rooster? Normally, no. A normal chicken embryo needs genetic material from both the egg and sperm. But nature has some strange exceptions. In some animals, unfertilized eggs can begin developing without sperm. This phenomenon is called parthenogenesis. It occurs naturally in certain reptiles, insects, fish, and other animals. Birds are much less capable of doing this. There have been rare observations of parthenogenetic development in chickens, but it isn't a normal reproductive pathway and generally doesn't produce a viable chick. So your supermarket egg isn't secretly a chicken waiting for the right conditions. It's missing the essential genetic contribution from a rooster. And there's another fascinating detail. A hen doesn't necessarily need to mate with a rooster immediately before every fertilized egg is produced. Remember that stored sperm? It can remain inside the reproductive tract and potentially fertilize multiple eggs released later. So one mating can lead to a series of fertilized eggs. The rooster can disappear, and the hen may continue, producing fertilized eggs for a while. Eventually, the stored sperm is depleted. Then the eggs become unfertilized again, which means the presence of a rooster doesn't actually determine whether a hen lays egg. It determines whether some of those eggs have the potential to become chicks. And that distinction is incredibly important because we often think of an egg as something that exists for a baby. But biologically, that's backwards. The egg is the reproductive structure. The embryo is what can develop inside it after fertilization. The hen builds the structure first. Fertilization changes what happens next. And this is why a rooster isn't the egg maker. The hen already has everything she needs to produce the egg. The rooster is basically the fertilization department. No rooster? The hen can still produce eggs. Rooster present? Some of those eggs can become fertilized, and humans have spent thousands of years taking advantage of that distinction. We discovered that these unfertilized eggs are incredibly useful. You can fry them, boil them, bake with them, turn them into sauces, use them to make cakes rise, and preserve them for surprisingly long periods under the right conditions. One of the strangest things about human domestication is that we took an animal's reproductive product, something evolution created for making more chickens, and turned it into one of the most common foods on Earth. Because laying an egg and fertilizing an egg are two completely different biological processes. The hen can do the first entirely on her own. The rooster is only needed for the second. So the next time you crack an egg into a pan, remember, the hen didn't need a rooster to make it. She only needed her biology, and a reproductive system that has been refined by evolution and then dramatically reshaped by humans. The rooster doesn't make the egg. He just decides whether there's a chicken hiding in its future.